Hi, um, hello everybody. I am Holly Taylor and this is my project presentation. A little bit about me is that am a big reader, so background into prior and my experience with multilingual learners. I grew up without much access to multilingual individuals. In college, I studied to become an English language arts teacher at the high school level because that was my favorite class in high school. But after graduating in 2013 from ASU to be a English teacher, I decided to go live abroad in León, Guanajuato, which is sort of in that area right here. And I taught English as a second language there. I did not intend to be a English as a second or as a foreign language teacher, but that was the experience that I had. That was my first teaching experience, and I quickly learned that I really enjoyed it. I really like language composition. I like thinking about how language is a way for us to negotiate and expand our identities. After I taught in León, I went back to the United States. I taught English in a high school here in Phoenix, not where I'm teaching now, but a different one. After 1 year of that, due to a couple different reasons, I decided to go abroad again, and I taught a second year here in San Jose, Costa Rica. And I taught there for about a year. Both my my abroad, my teaching English as a foreign language was primarily with adult learners. And so that was very different from where I teach now, which is I teach at a high school in Phoenix. What I like, I'm good with, I am, I enjoy thinking and talking and interacting with people and learning and just big learner. And I feel like through stories and through other people's lives and experiences is how I'm most interested in learning. So teaching is a really great profession for me. I like to travel and learn about different places, different cultures, different customs, which has been great because that has helped me in my current situation, which is where I teach now. So this is my 4th year at Alhambra High School, home of the Lions. This is our mascot. This is actually the outside of my classroom. These little signs right here say welcome in a bunch of different languages. Alhambra High School is located in the greater Phoenix area. It's considered to be like the west side of Phoenix. The school where I teach is a Title I school, so we serve people who majority are living below the poverty line. And the school itself has over 90% Hispanic population, but we do have a large population of refugees. The Refugee Resettlement Office is fairly close to where my school is located, so we receive a lot of students and families from places that have been experiencing reasons for refugee resettlement. So I have students from Uganda, Rwanda, the associated refugee camps in that area, students from the Burma, Myanmar area, students from Syria. I'm fortunate to have a very good access to lots of different types of speakers, although predominantly my classes are about 90% Spanish-speaking students as their other language. So a little bit more about the people in my room, the students in my room. They are at the intermediate level. So I teach high school. Their ages, it's 10th through 12th grade, and it's a proficiency-based class. So it's not, it's based on their proficiency. So anybody between 10th and 12th grade could find themselves in my class. Intermediate, if you're unfamiliar with the Arizona lingo, would be the highest level of ESL prior to passing the AZELA and moving into non-ELD classes or mainstream classes. So my students have a very functional and conversational level of English regardless of their L1. However, a lot of them are still working on developing their academic skills in English, which are necessary for being successful in their other classes and also for passing the test that would determine that. Something interesting about the group where I teach, and I do think it reflects this school and the community as well, is, and as many of you know, being ELD can mean a lot of different things, right? It can mean that you've lived your entire life here, you learned English and Spanish simultaneously. A lot of my students only are literate in English. They don't have strong literacy in their first language because they've only been to school in English environments here in the US. Meanwhile, I also have students that came to the US in middle school and have worked their way toward intermediate level. They may or may not have had formal education and can read and write in their other languages, depending on their prior experiences in school, which, considering the different students that I have in my room, it just is a huge diversity. So a lot of diversity in language and culture, but also in the qualities and skills that our schools deem to be required for academic success. I do think that, this is a personal aside, I do think that schools should open their, they should expand what they deem as academic achievement. So just because students aren't speaking and writing and demonstrating a specific type of skill doesn't mean that they lack skills in those areas. It's just that this test or our curriculum or state standards really do require a fairly specific type of skill demonstration. But yeah, this is my school context, and my focus for the practicum was reading comprehension. I think this is a blend of something that I believe in personally, something that I like. Maybe I'm biased. But I also feel like reading for me was my best teacher. I learned about the world, I learned vocabulary, I learned writing, I learned punctuation. I learned a lot of that through just absorbing texts. And so I understand that I grew up in a time where I was not challenged by devices for my attention, and so it came a bit more organically to me to absorb that text and then be able to have that foundation of literacy. And that's what I'm trying to instill in my classroom, is to find ways for reading to be enjoyable and for long-form texts to be something that students engage with regularly and that are comprehending. The focus of my practicum, reading comprehension strategies that develop or that foster independent reading comprehension. So strategies that are pick up and take to your next class, or things that they can internalize and use independently. So it's not something that is related to just the reading we do in my class, but the strategy can be taken outside of the room. But we are practicing with either nonfiction, or we are reading a novel in class right now. And then I really also wanted to focus on making reading an enjoyable experience. So I wanted to have them read texts without associating it with a ton of work and with tasks that kind of create this association between reading and boring, or reading and frustrating, or reading and work. I wanted the story, and I wanted to the thinking about the story and talking about the story and reflecting about the themes and the contexts of the story to be something that was enjoyable and something that they connected to both personally, but also that they could use to connect with one another. And I found this to be challenging because, as I said, devices and social media are often easier on the attention span, more enjoyable to the eyes, but communicating to students the power of imagination and what we can do when we bring texts into our imagination and create those types of movies in our mind, and then be able to use that to, again, reflect, discuss, and connect with other narratives, other situations. So the questions that you see written here were some of my essential questions as I went through different strategies for fostering comprehension and engagement. And what I found was relying on and more leveraging peer interaction was really helpful. A really helpful way to make students more engaged with their learning and comprehending a little bit better. So I have a quote here. It refers to the zone of relevance. So students draw upon their shared experiences as children of similar cultural and linguistic communities, which were different experiences than those they shared with the adults at school. For instance, youth showed affection, made jokes, found creative ways to draw upon one another's shared contextual knowledge, and engaged in translanguaging practices. So what I would do is have students read either before, during, and after. What we read was orally discussed. Again, I was trying to take the writing, multiple choice, pen to paper. I was trying to take that out a little bit while still activating the thinking behind some of those tasks. And I brought that into a collaborative experience. So students would have a whiteboard that they'd share with their partner, and they would draw pictures, or they would write, or they would draw a picture and then discuss it with their partner. Really, I thought that the oral processing that they did with one another was both a way to engage their enjoyment of the text as well as their comprehension of the text without associating it with tons of work. Now, that was a little hard to assess, but I didn't include that in my finding, but the assessment of that is something that I will go into in my final paper as my other finding. It says finding part 1. Part 2, so in this engagement and interaction, I also pulled in concepts of translanguaging as a way for students to negotiate meaning with one another, with L1 language partners or other language partners, both as a way to process what they have read and as a way to pull their entire knowledge bank, cultural and language bank into the classroom discussion of the text. I have a couple quotes here. I'm going to read the second one. So Pacheco and Miller write that encouraging students to speak and write in their heritage languages can give them opportunities to clarify misconceptions in texts, tap into their background knowledge, and demonstrate their understandings. Some students, so the way this looked in class was I had students, we would read a chapter. The chapters are really short. Read a chapter, and then they would draw like a picture or write like a one sentence, takeaway from that chapter as a way to first kind of process their own thinking. Then they would have a discussion with a peer that spoke their same other language, and they would have to discuss what happened in the book or in the chapter in that language. Then later, I would come around and talk to them in English, and they would kind of speak with me in English about what they read in English, but then spoke with their partner too in that other language, kind of activating all that different language base for them as a way, again, to kind of understand and comprehend it, but also to have an authentic interaction about something academic, trying to foster that engagement. There were some things that went better than others. I chose to discuss the findings that I felt were successful. There were other things that didn't go as